Joining us now, our good friend from the Mississippi State Senate, the chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee, representing District 23, Senator Briggs Hopson. Afternoon, Senator.
Good afternoon, Gerard. Good to be with you. I'm sorry I'm not with you in person, but we'll make up for it next time. I'll come to the studio.
You bet. Appreciate you coming on. Totally understand. I know it's kind of fast and furious around the Capitol there today. Give us kind of the latest on what you have your eye on there, and especially with a focus on what you're doing with appropriations there, Senator.
Well, let me just kind of set the stage generally for what's going on at the Capitol. Yesterday was a deadline day, and we took up the House bills that had come to us, were actually transferred over. We considered those and took up several. Many of them died. Likewise, the Senate bills were transferred to the House, and their deadline for getting those onto the calendar occurred yesterday. So yesterday was a big day. The last few days have been very big to see which bills of the other chamber that our chamber would want to take up. And that's been the primary focus. And then, of course, I'm always keeping an eye on appropriations, too, because that's a never-ending topic.
Yeah. And of course, you really get busy once all the sausage is made and the bills are kind of signed and in the books, and you know what it's going to cost and how you got to allocate it, essentially. Did I guess accurately at a high level describe the appropriations process? And I understand it's way more complicated than that, but at a high level.
Yeah, that's basically it. I mean, there are a few things that go on that are important to understand. One is the typical appropriations bills. We have about 110 different agency bills that we take up every year. So I'm always going to have my eye on those. But then as the process goes along, there are different things that the legislature decides that we want to do collectively. And sometimes those cost money, as you well understand. And so we end up looking at those too, and they may be add-on costs. Sometimes they're actually reductions, but they end up going through one of the agency's budgets. And then that's when we set our final budget right at the end of session. And those will be reflected in those various 110 or so agency budgets.
What's it looking like, Senator, total general fund budget at this point? I've been saying $6 billion and change here on the air. Is that still in the neighborhood, you think?
Well, that would include, when you get over 6, you're talking about adding in things like the Education Enhancement Fund, the Healthcare Expendable Fund, the Tobacco Control Fund, a few things like that. If you're talking about just straight general funds, what goes into the general fund agency, we're talking about $5.6 billion roughly, and then the other several couple of $100 million are the items that I mentioned, and a few other things that may be added in.
And it looks like, based on latest reports on revenue, still doing pretty well there, huh?
Yeah, you and I've had a couple interviews along the way, and I keep knocking on wood every time we have a discussion, and I'm going to continue to knock on wood. But revenue looks good right now. We're beating our revenue projections for sure. I will say for the listeners, keep in mind our revenue estimates going into this fiscal year were not great because we were still in the pandemic. And so we had probably a little bit lower revenue estimate, but I'm glad to see our economy is trucking along pretty well, all things considered. And there are a lot of factors. This is a weird year. I mean, any way you slice it, with all the uncertainty of the pandemic, certainly there have been some federal stimulus dollars that have changed some spending habits and other things in our economy, but overall you have to look at it and say, we've got to be fairly pleased with where we are. And I'm going to give credit to start with the governor and some of his policies and things that he's done. Also, my fellow legislators and leaders in the Senate, and then certainly the people of Mississippi that are continuing to push along and keep business open as best they can. And that's what keeps us going. We're funded largely by income tax, sales tax, corporate tax. We've got some others, obviously gaming tax, alcohol tax, use tax, et cetera. That's what funds our state government. And the more people are out doing, the better opportunity we have to generate revenue, to make our state, to meet some of the needs of the state, and then ultimately to be able to provide some relief to the taxpayers.
And with respect, Senator, to revenue, since we're on that topic, you got to believe that the governor's order to return businesses to 100% capacity effective today, I think at 5 o'clock, certainly we got to hope that will result in an increase of revenues.
Yeah, you got to think it does. And I hear from my constituents, those that own shops and businesses and restaurants, and they've had concerns about it, particularly my restaurateurs in my area that have had concerns about trying to make ends meet, keep people employed, put food not only on their table, no pun intended, but put it on the tables of the people that rely on them. And so it's important for our state. I mean, obviously, we want to be careful as it relates to the health situation. And I discussed, in fact, I had a conversation with Dr. Dobbs this morning, hoping to get more vaccine rollouts and get people back to where we're opening this economy up full steam ahead.
Yeah, and that's good timing with the weather improving. People are out more wanting to. I think people are tired of being holed up. I know you've heard it. I have. We experience it ourselves. And I think a lot of folks have tucked away some money. I mean, all the economists and all the reports from the financial community, banking community, suggest that folks are sitting on a little bit of nest egg, and they're ready to go out and take vacations and be active and get out and about and spend money. And I think we're going to benefit from that.
I hope so. I need to get them to teach me how to save some more money. So those that are saying, listen, give me a call and let me know how I can put some more money aside. I think my wife and my children are helping me spend about everything we bring in.
I got you. Well, certainly for a while there, we were kind of locked up. It was hard to spend your money, frankly, other than on the bare essential necessities of life. You just about couldn't buy anything else for a while. But I think you got to be optimistic. I certainly am. I hope our audience is, and I think our legislature is. I think that looks good. You've got some pivotal legislation that's flowing through over from the House, as you mentioned at the top of the interview. The teacher pay raise, I know there's some complexities there with that being a feature of the HB 1439 tax reform bill, and I think we've got perhaps some separate legislation now to address that. That was one of the lieutenant governor's top priorities. Where does that stand now, Senator?
We passed last night what we call a standalone teacher pay raise bill in the Senate. I'm going to tell you, we've pushed that in the Senate for 2 years now. That's been very important. It's been a priority issue for us in the Senate. And Senator DeBar, the chairman of education, along with the lieutenant governor, and those of us that serve on the Education Committee and Appropriations Committee had the opportunity last night to take a House bill and put our teacher pay raise language into it and move it along to the floor. So it is important for us, and we've recognized that. I've already set aside money in the budgeting process to make sure we had enough money to provide this teacher pay raise. And so that one is, I think, on its way. There's still some, obviously, negotiations that will have to occur with the House, but I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get that done this year.
Yeah. Briefly, before we go, I know you're busy today. Your thoughts about the tax legislation that is that the Speaker certainly championing, passed the House overwhelmingly. I know the Lieutenant Governor has concerns. Got a couple of minutes here. You have any thoughts? You've been able to dig into it yet, Senator?
I really haven't been able to dig into it. In all candor, I've been so focused on the deadlines. That bill doesn't have a deadline for almost 2 weeks. So everybody gets hot and bothered about this massive tax legislation and tax overhaul, and frankly, I've had too much going on. I think most of our members have had too much going on to really put the time and focus into it. And that's I guess if you ask my opinion, that's my concern. Is here we are, finally getting to turn our attention to that with 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks left to be able to consider it, and it's massive. I know that much about it, and I've heard from a lot of constituents and other very interested people who have expressed their opinions about various aspects. I mean, that bill is all over the place, and I'm not going to say I know the Speaker and Representative Lamar and others have worked hard in putting that together, but frankly, we in the Senate have not seen it until just the other day, and have had no time to really analyze that, Gerard. So it really puts us behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, when you get to that point, can dig in. We'll get you back on to talk about that. But certainly appreciate you joining us today. Look forward to getting you in the studio the next time, but still appreciate you taking the time to join us today, Senator. Stay safe, sir. I might head down to the Capitol after the show today. Hadn't been down there since everybody went home and kind of back in there, so to come see everybody.
Well, come on down. I'm fighting a little bit of a cold. That's why I'm back in my office and staying away from everybody.
Appreciate
That's why I
it.
didn't want to come to your studio, but I'll wave to you from a distance if you come down.
There
this
you
way.
go. Sounds good. We'll talk to you later. Thanks for joining us today, Senator. Stay safe, sir.
Thank you, Gerard. Good to talk with you. Have a good day.
You bet.